It's the Cougars versus the Knights. The second round of the Big 12 tournament is here. The BYU men's basketball program looking to punch their way into the quarterfinals. They'll have to get past a team they've beaten twice previously this season, but it's very difficult to beat a team 3 times. What will it take for BYU to conquer the Knights? We're talking about it on today's show.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where, of course, the motto is your team every day. And as such, this is your original daily podcast focused on all things BYU sports. All right, it is time now, my friends. The Big 12 tournament is officially here for BYU. They will square off against the UCF Knights Wednesday morning, 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time on ESPN2. For those of you looking for the program listing, I'll get it right out of the way, right up front. But this is a big game for BYU, bigger, I think, than most when it comes to a second round game in a tournament of this variety, because I think BYU is playing for more than just bragging rights and having a 3-game sweep of the UCF Knights this season. It's more about BYU punching their ticket and all but hopefully clinching a chance to play at the Delta Center in Salt Lake City in the first and second round of the NCAA tournament. That's what is on the deck here for BYU as they go into this matchup. Now, UCF advanced as the 12 seed with an 18-1 run to start the second half as they pulled away and dominated the Oklahoma State Cowboys in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. 77-62 was the final for the Knights. And I got to say, just looking at the stats and having watched this game, it's a little bit of an abnormal performance for UCF in one particular category above all others. The Knights aren't necessarily a very potent offensive team is probably the easiest way to say it. They shot an impressive 9 of 18 from the three-point line. This is a program that, as a UCF Knights program, if you look across the stat lines, if you go just average across the board, they usually average about 31.3% from three. They're not as high volume shooting as BYU and other Big 12 teams are. They actually prefer to do a lot of their work at the rim and in the mid-range game. But that 9 of 18 mark from the three-point line was huge for UCF as they rolled into the second round of this tournament. Now, will they be able to carry that momentum forward? Yes, you would assume so, but I am trusting in my mind, if you're a Cougar fan, that the law of numbers will catch up with UCF and they will not hit that mark again of 50% from the three-point arc. BYU has the experience of having beaten UCF twice. It was a slog down there in Orlando. It was 63-58. The indelible mark of that game in my mind will forever be Ali Khalifa just stunning all of us with that one-handed stuff as he drove it to the rim. It was like, wow, Ali Khalifa's got a little bit of ups. It was really impressive to see that, but BYU found a way to win that game. And then at home against UCF, BYU held on in a 90-88 victory. Incredible game. Remember, UCF put on that just miracle rally in the final minute and change. And Mark Pope said, this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Well, it might have been once in a lifetime, but it happened against BYU, and it was frankly terrifying for Cougar fans as they watched UCF just rally 21 points for Jackson Robinson in that game as BYU held on to win 90-88. They're looking at the statistics between those two games. I'm talking about when BYU's previous two matchups against UCF. The whole old adage is in college basketball, it's tough to beat a team twice and near impossible to beat them 3 times in a season. Yes, I get that, but BYU already has 2 wins under the belt, and they've done it in different ways against the Knights, so they can take the confidence that they can handle their business against UCF. The other thing about this is if you look at the statistics from the two games that these two teams played previously, BYU shot a very similar percentage from 3 in both of these games. They shot at the game down in Orlando, they shot 34.2%. And then in the game against, the game in Provo, BYU shot 34.8%. So they did not necessarily shoot great numbers against the UCF Knights, but a very consistent number overall for the Cougars in these two games. And it's my opinion, and Mark Pope and Greg Bell have pointed to this multiple times, that BYU, when they have shot over 32% from three, they have lost just twice this season. BYU is a high-volume three-point shooting team. We all know this. There's that video out there on YouTube. You can go find it. It's a really, really fun watch. BYU plays like a video game variety of offense. That's kind of the calling card that BYU has. They're going to run their offense. They're going to do what they're going to do. It was 34.6%, to be clear, against UCF in Orlando. So if BYU can shoot a similar number or even up that a little bit, they can shoot near 40% in this game. I've got the faith that BYU will be able to handle their business against the Knights and get a clean sweep in the 3 rounds against UCF. UCF's going to make it very tough, though. Ibrahim Diallo had a fantastic game against Oklahoma State. He's going to be brimming with confidence, 17 points, 11 rebounds for their big man in the middle, and he's an absolutely dominant big man. He's very difficult to put up with. Remember, anybody who watched that game, UCF and BYU in Orlando, saw how good Diallo can be on both ends of the court, and that's going to be something BYU's going to have to battle against in this game. But I think BYU is feeling very good about themselves. I said on our last podcast, for those of you who are everydayers, I think BYU is brimming with confidence right now, and for good reason. This is a team that went to Lawrence, Kansas, and beat the Kansas Jayhawks. Jerry Palm was on the radio station I work for, the KSL Sports Zone, earlier this week, and was just crowing about the fact that that might be the single biggest win of an individual game this season, because, as he said, nobody wins in Lawrence, Kansas. This is a BYU team who was down 1 on 3 straight possessions in the final minute and a half against number 6 ranked Iowa State, and had a chance to pull out another big win on the road in their road finale. And yes, it was a little bit of a debacle. They didn't get over the hump there, but I think this BYU team has got the confidence knowing that they can do whatever they need to do in different circumstances, no matter how difficult or how adverse they might be. BYU can handle themselves and go out there and put on a good performance. And yes, it's going to be difficult. UCF is going to be very familiar with what BYU's got. They're going to be thinking, okay, it's payback time. Let's finally get one against BYU, and let's get it on the biggest stage of the season today. It'd be a big win for the Knights, no doubt. But I think at BYU, the whole talk is always about control the controllable. Well, if BYU wants to control the controllable, win this game, get some payback potentially against Texas Tech, and then I think you're very much all but locked in to playing the first and potentially second round at the Delta Center in Salt Lake City. And imagine how many thousands of Cougar fans will be making the trek to Salt Lake City to essentially make the Delta Center the Marriott Center North for BYU if that plays out that way. That is what is at stake here for the BYU men's basketball program. And I, for one, I'm looking forward to seeing how BYU does out there in Kansas City. And if BYU can take what they've done down the stretch here this season and just essentially replicate what they've done, shoot a good number from 3, handle your business on the defensive end of the glass, don't turn it over a gazillion times, I am feeling confident that BYU can take round 3 against the UCF Knights and get themselves ready for a quarterfinal matchup against Texas Tech. And I think if you make it to the semifinals in the Big 12 tournament, if you're one of the 4 final teams in this tournament remaining, I absolutely think that the NCAA Tournament Committee would reward BYU with as high as a 4 seed and would put them in that Salt Lake City regional. So it's a really big game starting with this one against UCF. You can't make it to Texas Tech without winning this one. So all focus goes here, and we'll obviously reevaluate after this game goes down out there at the T-Mobile Center. All right, coming up here in just a minute, BYU football. We'll talk a little bit about a thinning or a culling of the herd. I know that sounds harsh, but we have seen at least one quarterback decide that his future is best served elsewhere. We'll explain who and what it means for the BYU football program coming up next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, my friends. What brings home the winning trophy is also what brings your rider home, makes your ride or die alive. Wow, I'm screwing this up. Is also what keeps your ride or die alive. Let's get that out of the way right now. The best part is eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered, my friends. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, my friends. And with all the parts that you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. That's eligible items only. Exclusions apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. But get started today, my friends, once again at ebaymotors.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Utah Community Credit Union. Good news is, my friends, UCCU has elevated their checking accounts by enhancing them with more benefits, more savings, and more online protections than ever before. A lot more. Paired with the most advanced and comprehensive mobile banking tools, Elevated Checking is a must-have financial product packed with lifestyle, security, and financial benefits for you, the consumer. The lifestyle benefits alone include cell phone protection, roadside assistance, telehealth with 24/7 access to health professionals with zero copay, and exclusive savings on travel, shopping, and dining. Think about that. It's an incredible list of benefits. There's a whole lot more than that. The best part is Elevated Checking is free when you do any one of the following. Use your credit or debit card 15 times or more a month, make a monthly direct deposit of $500 or more, or maintain an average daily balance of $1,500. Otherwise, Elevated Checking is just $6 a month to take advantage of all of these features available to you now. So visit uccu.com to open an Elevated Checking account online today. We also can stop by any branch in person and open it up that way if that's what you prefer. It's all courtesy of your friends over at UCCU. Love where you bank. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. I want to remind you guys that mark your calendar for the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown. That takes place Monday, March 18th at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. That's 5 o'clock Mountain. It's going to be early. Experts Andy Patton and Isaac Shade from Locked On College Basketball will break down their brackets and discuss everything you need to know about when filling out a winning bracket and prepare you for the NCAA Tournament. Find the Locked On Bracket Breakdown and the Locked On College Basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, BYU football. Some news came out. I'm putting this podcast up on Tuesday afternoon leading into Wednesday. It's, I guess, technically, if you're going by the days of the week, it's our third podcast of the week, so technically our Wednesday show. But nonetheless, earlier today, I saw Mitch Harper, my compatriot over at KSLSports.com, a dear friend of mine, a guy that I respect immensely, and he reported this. I have since been able to confirm it, that BYU has one quarterback, at least in the NCAA Transfer Portal, and I expect more will come, but Nick Billoups has decided to enter the NCAA Transfer Portal and seek his future elsewhere as a football player. Now, let me be very blunt up front. I'm not surprised by this in the least. Nick is a guy who has been a career backup for BYU. He transferred from Utah to BYU simply because he wanted to play quarterback. He was a walk-on originally with the Utes, and Kyle Whittingham, the staff up at Utah, asked him if he would consider making a position change. The thought was that he was going to end up probably as a safety for the Utes. He wanted to continue to play offensive on the offensive side of the football, and BYU offered them that opportunity to do that. So he walked on with BYU, and he's had a really decent run at BYU. Remember, he was one of the faces, if not the face, of the Built Bar deal that existed for quite a while for walk-on athletes to have their tuition paid for via an NIL arrangement with Built Bar. Nick Greer, the CEO, there's that famous photo of him and Nick Billoups with that initial check when they first announced that. And it was a really, really cool thing. Nick has been effusive in his praise of what he's experienced at BYU as a guy who came here, who wasn't a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. From everything I have heard from him and or read about him, he has very much enjoyed his time in Provo, but he is not going to see the field. That's the simple truth of the matter right now. We have been told by Aaron Roderick it's a two-man race at quarterback. It's Jake Retzloff versus Gary Bohannon. The other thing is BYU's currently got 10 quarterbacks. I guess now with Nick entering the transfer portal, that would make it 9 quarterbacks. And that's just frankly way too many guys in a quarterback room. Jake Retzloff said it himself last week when we were talking with him during media availability. He said, we have 10 chairs in the room, in the quarterback room, and every one of them is filled. And I never thought I'd actually see that in my time here in Provo. There is going to be a thinning of this group that is going to be coming, and Nick Billoups has already kicked it off. Now, the other good news part of this is that Nick Billoups, if I'm not mistaken, has already received his degree from BYU. So he's a graduate transfer. That's why he's able to enter the transfer portal right now. He doesn't have to wait until it opens on April 15th. He can begin looking around, evaluating what his options are and determine what the next step is for him. I can understand completely why he is doing this. And I'm also going to add this. I am stunned he didn't make this move already. He was a guy that was thought to be in the mix when BYU was playing that New Mexico Bowl, that he was potentially in line to be BYU's starting quarterback in this game. Well, BYU decided to go with Soljay Maiava-Peters, and they ended up winning that game, and Soljay went the entire game as the number one QB in that matchup, and Nick Billoups never saw the field. And I personally, that's when I kind of saw the writing on the wall and was like, okay, Nick, you may want to look at other options. But he decided to stick it out, get his degree, and now he's going to go find another place to play. I think he is a good player. He is a solid football player. He is just not what BYU either A, needs at this juncture, or B, doesn't think that he will be able to succeed at the highest level that BYU needs him to succeed at, and that is to compete at the Big 12 level. That is, and it's not an indictment on Nick Billoups as a human being. It's just that's the business that BYU is in. They've got to have high-level quarterback play. Now, will Jake Retzloff and or Gary Bohannon offer that? That is very much to be determined, but Nick Billoups has decided the writing's on the wall. I've got my degree. I've fulfilled my end of the bargain, as it were, when it comes to these agreements between the university and these student athletes. I say it all the time. If a guy wants to transfer, and Nick had done it, he already used his one-time transfer to come from Utah to BYU. Now that he's graduated, he doesn't owe BYU anything. He got his degree. He's not going to cost BYU anything in terms of an APR score hit or anything like that because he has already graduated. So I think this is a smart move for Nick. I think he understands that the circumstances are what they are. I am going to say right now, I'll put it on the record right now, that he will not be the last quarterback to leave BYU this spring. I am expecting multiple quarterbacks to leave because you just simply cannot have 9 quarterbacks, and with Nick, it was 10 on your roster. It's just not going to fly. And yes, a number of them are walk-ons. You've got guys like Micah Fea. There's a kid named Dane Christensen who's a walk-on out of Arizona. There are walk-ons there that very well probably are going to be asked to move positions as well. Micah Fea, for example, on the roster right now, I've actually got it right. I've got somewhere around here. I know he's listed at 6'4", 240 pounds. That is a huge body at quarterback. And he was a very decent athlete during his time at Orem High School. I could very easily see him making the transition to potentially playing tight end, linebacker, defensive end. So I'm expecting the BYU, once they show up in August, I think you'll see a quarterback room of more traditionally what BYU likes to carry, about 5 guys. And 2 of them are going to be Gary Bohannon and Jake Retzloff. I assume that Noah Lugo is going to be right there as one of those 5 quarterbacks. Ryder Burton, I'm guessing, is going to be part of that. And we'll see who else. Maybe Cade Fennegan sticks it out and decides to hang around. I don't know what it is, but it will not be 9 and 10 guys deep in fall camp, at least in my opinion. I think that's just way too many guys. And there is frankly no way that BYU can get all these guys reps. Oh, the other guy I probably should mention is Trayson Bourget. He's absolutely going to be in the mix. He came to BYU. He's got starting experience at the FBS level. So he's probably, if I were to guess, the 5 guys I would think are BYU's quarterbacks going into the season, barring them adding somebody in the transfer portal, which I'll also be very clear, I do not expect them to hit the transfer portal for a quarterback unless somebody is just a bona fide star out there that BYU can get their hands on. I think your 5 quarterbacks going into the fall, in my opinion, would be Jake Retzloff, Gary Bohannon, Trayson Bourget. I'll say Cade Fennegan, and then I'm actually going to ace out Cade Fennegan. I'll say Ryder Burton, and then Noah Lugo. I guess the 5th spot, I'll say it's a tie. It's one or the other of Ryder Burton and or Cade Fennegan. And maybe if both of them do want to hang on, maybe BYU makes a special exception and carries 6. But there's just way too many guys for too few spots right now. And frankly, a quarterback, you don't play quarterback by committee. It's just not a proven recipe. And I think it would be a recipe, frankly, for disaster for BYU to try and use that method. And I fully expect that Aaron Roderick will refuse to consider any such notion. Now, injury obviously could necessitate more than one quarterback playing in a season, but when you are QB1, you're QB1 until you either are removed for performance purposes or injury. That's really kind of the 2 ways that you remove yourself from the lineup. And that just doesn't lend itself to carrying many more than I feel like 5 quarterbacks in a normal season for a college football program. Frankly, a lot of NFL teams, remember, they carry like 2 quarterbacks and have 1 on the practice squad. It's not a normal occurrence to have 8, 9, and in BYU's case going into spring, they had 10 guys there. It's a crazy high number. And like I said, the thinning or the culling will be coming for BYU. And let me also just reiterate one more time. I wish Nick Billoups absolutely the best. I think this is a guy who could go to a number of programs, and even in this state, he could look at a program like Utah Tech, a Southern Utah, Weber State, and think, I can go and compete there at the FCS level. Is it an ideal situation because he's been playing at a Power 4 program? Maybe not, but if you want to get on the field, that's kind of what you got to weigh in Nick Billoups' case. And I'm assuming he's the first, but he's not going to be the last BYU quarterback that's leaving BYU this season. All right, we will finish up today's show with a couple other notes on BYU players in the pros currently, and NFL free agency rolls on. A trio of Cougars getting deals, as well as one getting one reworked. We'll dig into all that as we roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament, my friends. Whether you're betting big on an upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook, and that's our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with your first when your first $5 bet wins. Think about that. $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You even can pick who's going to win it all. And all you got to do is have your first $5 bet win. You get $200 to play with after that. It's an incredible offer from our friends at FanDuel, and they're celebrating the tournament. It's the best time of the year. March is one of those months on the sports calendar that is hard to beat, and it's simply because of the NCAA tournament. It's a really fun format. Obviously, you have the Cinderella runs for the lower seeds. You have the one seeds who are trying to hold up their end of the bargain. You want to believe BYU can make a miracle run to the Elite Eight or the Final Four. You have all that and more that you're capable of betting on. And once again, you can get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets once again, my friends. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, please consider subscribing to our Locked On Cougars Insider Group. It's a great way to get updates on BYU football practices. I am standing out there watching the media portion. I will be heading over to BYU shortly after I post this show. So if you want live updates, 14-day free trial. You can sign up right now. It sends text messages directly to your phone with those updates. You can interact by firing back with your questions and comments as well. Like I said, it's a 14-day free trial, $5 a month afterwards. It supports the podcast financially, but at the same time gets you on the inside with us here on Locked On Cougars. Get the links to it in the show notes, whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, before we go on today's show, a couple of notes on BYU. As congratulations, first off, go to the BYU women's softball team. They faced UVU on Monday in a crosstown clash matchup, and Maddie Bejarano's walk-off 3-run home run lifted BYU to a 9-7 victory over the Wolverines, securing its second straight win at Gail Miller Field after their win against Texas Tech on a Saturday. So congratulations to BYU softball on that. They now travel to maybe face the best team they're going to play this season. Okay, that's they still have to face Oklahoma, but they're traveling to face Texas this coming weekend down there in Austin. The Longhorns are ranked number 1 or number 2, depending on which poll you look at right now. It's going to be a very, very tall order for BYU this weekend, but this is what BYU's been signing up for when it comes to the Big 12. You're going up against the best of the best, especially when it comes to softball, and best of luck to BYU softball this weekend. Now, in NFL free agency, some good news for former Cougars in the pros. Sione Takitaki, after 5 years with the Cleveland Browns, who drafted him out of BYU, he is now headed to the New England Patriots on a 2-year deal. Congratulations to Sione. It's really cool to see him getting a second contract. Actually, it'd be his third contract, I should say. I think he signed a second deal already with the Browns. But Sione is a guy that really has had some really bright moments. He had 269 total tackles, 4 sacks, and 2 interceptions after being a 3rd-round pick. He's been a very solid player. Dealt with an ACL tear at one point during his 5 years there in Cleveland, and we wish him nothing but the best as he moves on to the New England Patriots now. Jaren Hall is a guy that's going to be an interesting case this offseason because Kirk Cousins is leaving the Minnesota Vikings. He's signing with the Atlanta Falcons on a monster 4-year, $180 million deal. But the other point to be made is that currently the roster for the Minnesota Vikings features Jaren Hall, Nick Mullins, and then the reports are that Sam Darnold is going to sign a 1-year deal with the Vikings, and kind of a prove-it deal for Sam as he tries to resurrect his career. Can Jaren rise to the top and earn that starting quarterback job in Minnesota? TBD, because there's also talk when it comes to the internet about the Minnesota Vikings potentially drafting somebody, but we'll see what happens. I am interested to see where things ultimately shake out for Jaren as a quarterback in the NFL. Obviously, his injury concerns, the concussion issue in particular, are going to be something that's going to be monitored very closely. And then finally, Fred Warner has reworked his deal with the San Francisco 49ers. It's not a bad thing. Let me be very clear about this. He had a $15 million cap hit upcoming this season. He has reworked that into where essentially he'll be playing on the veteran minimum this coming season for the 49ers. It's like 1.4 million or something like that. But he is banking away guaranteed money, 15 million onto future years over the next 4 years with the 49ers. Fred is at the peak of his powers. Like I said, he's a very, very capable player, maybe the single best linebacker in the league right now. And cool to see him sacrificing so that the 49ers can obviously gear back up, make another run at a Super Bowl. And as a 49ers fan, I will forever love Fred if he can pull off the getting over the hump and getting BYU, I guess I should say, and the 49ers back into the winner's circle when it comes to the Super Bowl. As a 49ers fan, I would absolutely love that. And then we're obviously going to be tracking Zach Wilson. He's been granted permission to seek a trade from the New York Jets. We'll see where he lands. I think that the Rams would be a great place for him. Going to Kansas City would be awesome to work with Andy Reid. Even a place like Denver, I think it was one that's been pointed out. I think, Jonathan Jones says that now that Kirk Cousins has landed in Atlanta, the free agent QB market should start to take shape. The Broncos have discussed names like Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson. So we'll see. I think that Sean Payton could do a lot of good things with Zach Wilson as a quarterback. So very interested to see where things ultimately land for all of these former Cougars in the pros. And I guess the overall thing is that it's fun to see guys living out their dream at the pro level and representing BYU on the biggest stage as well. So there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this technically Wednesday edition of the podcast. Looking forward to seeing how BYU does against the UCF Knights. We'll be back with another edition shortly after that game goes final, reacting win or loss and breaking down what it means for the BYU basketball program. We'll have it all covered for you guys right here on your daily podcast on BYU, the Locked On Cougars podcast. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on the Locked On podcast. As always, of course, the motto is your team every day, and that is what we do right here on Locked On Cougar.